The first snow fell, U.S. meteorologists, oh yeah, they realized there was a good chance the late winter storm wasn't going to produce giant snow totals in big northeast cities as predicted, but they didn't change their forecast because they said they didn't want to confuse the public. Hey everyone, huge storm coming, barrel down, right? Never mind. I'll tell you, even the Weather Channel, they don't want, these forecasters don't want to admit they can't tell you the truth about the weather. You know why? Because they have no freaking idea. What they should be telling you is, folks, the weather system is screwed up, and we don't even know. We don't know if this is going to hit you or not, but they don't want to admit it. University of Minnesota drops homecoming queen and king and replaces with genderless royals. Speaking of big pharma, the University of Minnesota has become the latest university to do away with the traditional homecoming king and queen titles and have replaced them with the gender-neutral royals term. You see, this is what I mean about it being crammed down our throats. This is what I mean about it being an agenda. It is an agenda. This whole transgender, homosexual thing, it's being crammed down the throats of people. And listen, again, I don't care if you're transgender. I don't care if you're homosexual. I'd still sit down and have dinner with you. That doesn't bother me. But don't cram this crap down my throat. Don't cram it down our throats. You're destroying. Now, this is interfering with tradition. It's always been traditional, the king and queen. We can't help it if you like the same sex or if you were born differently than others. You know, welcome to planet Earth where everything is just strange, okay? But, yeah, now this school is going to do I'll tell you, if I was a parent, I'd take my kids right out of the school. I would. I'd have to. I mean, because look what they're teaching them. Look what they're embedding in these kids' heads. I mean, they don't even get a choice. It all gets crammed down their throats. Incredible. All right, 400,000-year-old half skull points to mystery people. They say the discovery of this 400,000-year-old half skull in Portugal has offered tantalizing hints about a possible ancestor of the Neanderthals, and researchers have reported this. The fossil was unearthed in a cave site, and it marks the oldest human cranium fossil ever found in Portugal. So maybe when they get some answers to that, maybe they'll tell us, maybe they won't. If they do, we'll pass it on to you. Study, 4 in 5 Oklahoma City students can't read clocks. Yeah, that's what it says, and I believe it. 4 in 5 Oklahoma City students can't read clocks. You know, test them sometime. If you see, very rare that you see them with a traditional watch on. Not one of them Google this or that tell them everything they need to know. But a real watch, test them sometimes. Say, hey, you got the time? And see if they look and stare at it. I can't see it. That's because that's what they'll do. Because I'm telling you, they've dumbed them down. Dumbed them down. Thank God. Maybe we got a chance now. Maybe we could build them back up. We've got to build them back up. They don't know anything. I'm telling you, there's AI. Alfred Weber might be onto something there with this AI, at least to the point that it's how it's taken over. They say, oh, Google, tell me this, or Google, tell me that. They don't need to know anything. They just ask the question. So then when it comes time and they go, Google, was 9/11 an inside job? No, and never ask that question again. Okay, thank you, Google. That's all they need. They'll give you the answers. Just like they'll tell you what pills to take. They'll tell you what cars to drive. They'll tell you everything. Everything you want to know. They'll tell you exactly how to run your life if that's what you want. And you obviously want that if that's what you do. I mean, I couldn't imagine having one of them little devices in my house or in my studio and asking questions. My good Lord. Anyhow, let's see if we can get maybe one more in here. Oh, this one. We touched on this one once before. Alien hunters who claim to have spotted a giant 2-mile-wide saucer moving along the Pacific seafloor. There's no new information here on that. It's just that they had used Google Maps to find the saucer-shaped objects and that it's 2 miles in diameter. So I don't know. Maybe we could ask Patty Brazard about that next week when she's on. Kim Jong-un, he's back again. Kim Jong-un threatens merciless attacks on America in retaliation for South Korea drills. Little Kim Jong-un better settle down over there. Little Kim's going to get himself in trouble. Kim Jong-un has threatened to unleash a merciless attack on America if joint military exercise with South Korea continue. He said he would attack his Western enemies from ground, air, sea, and underwater. Well, isn't that the sea, little Kim? Ask him if he could read the clock. I wonder. Anyways, that's what he said in a rattling statement released through state media. Little Kim Jong-un, I had trouble taking this guy serious because if you put him right next to Rosie O'Donnell, it's almost hard to tell them apart. If it wasn't for the eyes, you couldn't tell those two apart. I mean, I think they're sisters, Kim Jong-un. Maybe they could be king and queen. Oh, I'm sorry, royal. Is that it? Royals? I mean, I don't know. What's the politically correct term? I don't know, and I don't care. So, anyhow. Oh, I want to go to break because I'm supposed to here. But you know what? Because we got a guest coming up. But I've got to tell you about a couple more here because you got to know about them. There is that's what it's called, a creepy facial recognition app. That's right. And it lets users find strangers on Facebook by taking their picture. Now, I don't like this. I don't like this at all. But, of course, I wouldn't, right? I say here, a facial recognition app that can identify strangers from a photograph has been created by a British entrepreneur. It's called FaceZam, and it can identify people by matching a photo of them with their Facebook profile. All users have to do is take a picture of someone on the street. So we could be walking down the street. Someone could just take a picture. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you pull up next to somebody. You have a little disagreement on the road, traffic-wise. The guy gets mad at you. He could take a picture of you. He could then go put it on Facebook. He could use his facial recognition app, and he could find you. And if you're one of the dummies who put all your information on Facebook, then he's going to come to your house and maybe kick your ass or kill you, right? Or who knows, damage your property. This is not good. This is not a good thing. It's called FaceZam, and I don't like it. So I'm telling you, folks, I really am. I'm considering just taking everything down off of Facebook. Listen, we got to make a stand here. We keep talking about how bad it is, and I use it for the show because I try to pull as many people from over there as I can to listen to this show and try to wisen people up. But I'm telling you, I don't know how much longer I can hang in there with you all over there on Facebook. I'm really, really tired of them. I wish everybody would just close their accounts tomorrow. Everybody. I wish everybody would close their Facebook accounts tomorrow. We would show Pimple Puss something, real fast, and the rest of them too. But, people can't do it. They're addicted to their social media. And now when you're on the street, hey, ladies, maybe one of Obama's perverts want to know where you live or something, So they walk by you, they take a picture, And now when you're in a store, you're out in public and someone takes your picture, you got to be even more aggressive and angry about, right? I was like, oh, no. Now more than ever, you don't want someone taking your picture. Look what they can do with it. Find out everything about you if you're stupid enough to put everything about you out there. And a lot of people are. Let's see. Here's I got two more. I just have to get these out of here. I have to. I think they're important. Google's ALO app. I think I'm saying it right. ALO app. ALLO app can reveal to your friends what you've searched. Here's another one. This stuff is just getting ridiculous. The mobile messaging app lets you include Google Assistant in your conversations. And what this app could do is it'll sometimes accidentally, whoever you're speaking with, will accidentally give them all your search history. So then somebody will know. Let's face it, if you've been looking at kitty videos, fine. If you've been looking at porn, they're going to know. Yeah. If whatever you've been doing, if you've been looking at their profile, whatever you've done, it'll all come up and show them. So some of you might want to be concerned about that. Me personally, I don't use that stuff, and nor would I. But it's just. It's more and more against you, folks. I'm telling you. Why do we use this stuff? When I say we, I'm kind of being nice, But yeah, that's what it says. It says it accidentally sometimes makes a mistake and sends that. Can you imagine if you're talking to your mom? on something like that and you're doing things you shouldn't be doing, yeah, you know, hey, to each their own. What you do in your privacy is your business as long as you're not breaking any real laws, right? But some things you might not want. I mean, what if you're in the closet or something? You know, I mean, that could come out now before you tell the family. They might already know, thanks to your technology. Scientists rewrote the DNA of an entire species. Biologists designed a new type of yeast from scratch, and now they want to bring it alive. That's right. Just like Frankenstein. It's alive, right? They say in just a few years, scientists will unveil a creature whose every letter of DNA was written by a human being, which technically would make that human being its creator. So then you would then be their God. Now, here we are, like it or not, it's a fact, right? Who's your creator? I don't know. This is borderline. I don't know if you should be doing what they're doing here. I really don't. I don't like it. But here's one thing it does prove, is that could be exactly how we came about, folks. You know, we're looking for this big, almighty, invincible God, and for all you know, somebody in a lab might have just decided to tinker around and create it from scratch. They're doing it. Don't say it can't be done. They're doing it. So this kind of makes me scratch my head and say, I don't know, should we be allowing this kind of thing? Not so sure we should. I'm Michael Vera. This is Late Night in the Midlands on the LNM Radio Network. I'm going to take a break, and then we'll be back here with my guest, David Mead. Don't go away, folks.
The LNM Radio
it's
Network
just starting. It really is. We'll be back. All right, we are back. This is Late Night in the Midlands. I'm Michael Vera, not a lone wolf, but I am Michael Vera, and I'm about to bring my guest on here in just a moment with us, and we'll get this thing started. The website's www.latenightinthe.midlands.com. Go on over, become a member, be informed, and by all means, inform others. And so we're going to get it all going here in a second. I'd like to tell you a little bit about David. David Mead studied astronomy, among other subjects, at the University of Louisville. After graduation, he worked in forensic investigations for a number of years. The last 10 years, he has spent with Fortune 1000 companies writing special reports for management. He is a specialist in research and investigations. He has over 10 books in his credit, including the best-selling Planet X, the 2017 Arrival, and his latest, the Coup d'etat against President Donald J. Trump. And he enjoys relating science and the Bible and believes Planet X is a perfect marriage of the two. So that being said, let's go ahead and bring David on with us. David, I welcome you back to Late Night in the Midlands. How are you tonight?
Well, great, Michael. Good to be back.
Well, it's great to have you back. Looking forward to talking with you tonight. I thought maybe a good place to start would be maybe a little bit of background and what got you going in all this stuff, and for our new listeners. And as a matter of fact, what brought on the new book? I couldn't imagine what what would bring such a book on. You must be in reality, huh?
It's an unusual, esoteric book, but it's high concept, as they would say in Hollywood, because it's what everybody is talking about on all the channels, mainstream and alternate media. And it's an amazing, amazing story. It's one of the two major stories of the century, and it's a story of conspiracies and cover-ups at the highest levels. And as you mentioned, I studied science in college, but I also studied I spent a year or two studying economics, and so I'm familiar with both topics. And this has always been my second highest interest level, and I've followed this for, probably 5 or 10 years, especially since George Bush the second Jr. was in. I saw a lot happening, let's say since 9/11, and I've studied it for 10 years. I've thought about writing something, and I finally made up my mind last November I would go ahead and start on this book. And I just finished it this week. It came out as an ebook on Amazon and Barnes & Noble a few days ago, and it'll be a print book all over the world in just a few days. So, as you mentioned, it's called The Coup d'etat against President Donald J. Trump by David Mead. And it is a book that's probably 40 to 50% about geopolitics and the deep shadow government, the deep state, which
yeah.
is what everybody calls it. And it's about their origins and their sources and their means, motive, and opportunity. And the other 50% of the book is how to protect yourself financially against it, because at some point, and unfortunately it'll probably be on President Trump's watch, at some point they're going to run out of options, and they're going to probably, I would imagine, and I've got evidence of this that I can bring up in a few minutes, but they're going to simply do a global economic reset that will totally wipe out the mirage of the stock market, among other financial instruments. This will be the last tool they have to try to get compliance from Trump. Trump is very independent. He is not part of the New World Order. He has engaged in a lightning war against the New World Order. And they're a very, very powerful, well-funded group, and there's hundreds, if not thousands, of think tanks, foundations, societies in Britain, in the United States, that have espoused this philosophy since, I would say, probably for over 200 years, but especially since 1947, especially since the founding of the United Nations. So that's a brief overview of my thinking and how I got into writing this other book.
And you're right on. I mean, they are so desperate. And, you know, I've told people over and over again, Donald Trump was not supposed to win. He was the joke. They were going to make the joke out of him. He was never going to win. It was going to be Hillary Clinton. When Obama became president, they had already knew that the next time around, it was going to be Hillary Clinton they wanted in there. And so they've known for a long time it was going to be Obama, Clinton, and then if they still needed a little more time, they'd probably bring in the first homosexual president or transgender, because what they were doing is make, you know, first black man, first woman, first this, that. So this way, if you say anything against what they're doing, you look really bad, like what they tried to do with Donald Trump. Now, you're right. Donald Trump is not part of what I call him the old world order now, because that's what I hope they'll be, the old world order, and, you know, we'll win this thing. But I'll tell you what, you're right there. The evil cabal is so well funded. It is well, Trump said his administration's a well-oiled machine. Well, so is that New World Order, and believe me, they don't like to lose.
Yes, it is an amazing battle that we are watching day by day, week by week, and I don't believe it's going to end. I believe it's going to continue. It's going to intensify. But as you mentioned, they were sure that Hillary Clinton would be. In fact, the Clintons were so delusional that they allocated $7 million for fireworks that night, and you know, they spent that money on a fireworks setup. They were certain they were going to win, and you know, Time Magazine, all of them thought that was it.
Yeah, and you know, I think, wasn't it days before the election that she actually canceled the fireworks? I was like, she knew something.
Yeah, it was right before, but it had been set up to occur until just right before, and then apparently she had a premonition or a harbinger of her losing position. So they are indeed, and you know, they're frightened because, you know, you have a new attorney general in, and you know, I don't think anything's going to come of the emails, but the Clinton Foundation is another matter entirely, and the statute of limitations is open on that. So I don't think they're out of the woods. I think they're very, very concerned.
And again, I think they underestimated, because Obama could have very easily have, well, I guess she would have had to been charged with something to give her a pardon, right? So maybe he couldn't have pardoned her, or could he have?
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. But, you know, here's the other thing, right? You're asking the question why. Very good question. I don't believe that Obama and Clinton were on the best speaking terms because of some things, because of some conflicts they'd had when they ran against each other years before. So I don't think he really cared that much for the Clintons. Well,
yeah, I don't think so either. But at the same time, they're kind of working. It's that old thing. I don't like you, you don't like me, but we have a common enemy. It's you know, and so it seems like Obama, he's working behind the scenes, and I'm sure Clinton's still working behind the scenes to cause problems as well. And of course, you know, the head honcho, Mr. George Soros, I guess, right? He's
oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
The man is unbelievable. I mean, my God, he was one of the puppet masters behind the Georgian attack on South Ossetia, which killed Russian peacekeepers and civilians. He was a puppet master behind the Ukraine, sparked a civil war. He has openly supported sanctions against Russia. He's called for a $50 billion fund to help wrest Crimea back into the Ukrainian fold against the wishes of the Russians. He has fomented social unrest in Russia. He's tried to tarnish the legitimacy of Putin's 2012 election through his open society foundations, and they've been thrown out of the country.
Yeah.
And, I mean, one person you don't want to really be an enemy of is Vladimir Putin. You just don't mess with the Russians. And I don't know.
I wish Putin would get him. I mean, yeah, I'd look the other way.
I think, or you're suggesting that possibly not. We're not threatening him, but you're right. He has put himself in a position where he might be a dead man walking. Absolutely, I agree with you.
Well, and normally I guess I wouldn't be for that kind of thing, but this guy, if you want to talk about a Satan, holy cow, this guy, he could certainly apply for the job. He's putting so much money towards destroying Donald Trump through the campaign, and I mean, this guy, he wants him down because it's interrupting every New World Order agenda that they've ever had. I mean, it's such an interference, and I'll tell you, I'm surprised they haven't pulled dirtier tricks by now.
Yeah, if a viewer or listener looks at my website, writerswebservices.com, just enter David Meade. The coup d'etat against President Donald J. Trump, and you'll come to a webpage which says Writers Web Services, which I basically advertise my two main books on. And you'll see if you look under the Donald J. Trump page, President Trump page, you'll see a paragraph about Soros, and you'll see a hyperlink that is something like 187 foundations, think tanks, and these non-governmental, non-profit groups that he funds, that are all far left, that are anti-Trump, that are fomenting social unrest. Almost 200 of them.
I wish Donald Trump would start. I mean, he's doing a good job, but I wish he would start get his legal department going after these people. I guess they're investigating Obama now, right? Isn't he being investigated for spying on Trump?
Yeah. Well, let's look at. I mean, it's odd. It's so strange. Trump says something, like, for example, he says, well, Obama was spying on me, and weeks later, it seems like he says something, and weeks later something happens. What happened a week or two later? You got the Vault 7 revelation from the CIA, and this is amazing. I'll synopsize it for your listeners.
Sure.
Well, let's look at the revelations that Vault 7 contains. One, the CIA has malware, which creates backdoors into your smartphones and smart TVs. Two, your electronic devices are the CIA's microphones. They can turn them on and off. Three, your PC computer is the CIA's spy via Windows Update. Four, Skype chats are converted into text and stored on CIA clouds. Now this is widely known and distributed public knowledge now. This was accomplished during the Obama administration. Is it legal? Let's continue. Five, cars can be used to carry out assassinations. Six, it looks like the entire Silicon Valley group is part of the CIA apparatus. So I would say, what is happening? What's being exposed? I'd say the world is under major deception. Doesn't the CIA, have a mandate to protect the American people? Now, Vault 7 says that the U.S. consulate in Frankfurt is a covert CIA facility. Well, that's not really a surprise because consulates are great covers. But here's what else goes in tandem with this. Vault 7 says the CIA can mimic Russian hackers by leaving Russian fingerprints.
Yeah.
And that's called a frame. And that's what the New World Order has been saying all the time. Russia, Russia, Russia. But it's a synopsis. I think the good news is this entire process vindicates President Trump. All the secrets are out. Obama's administration built a mega machine that can tap everyone, including Trump. And, Nixon was impeached over just one instance called Watergate. So Trump's claims appear to be absolutely true. I believe he'll be a two-term president. And these are turning points in world history. The New World Order plan, I believe, is unraveling. Now, a lot of the mainstream propaganda, what he calls fake news media, hasn't even touched on Vault 7. And the reason they don't report? Because the Fourth Amendment, the right to arbitrary intrusion, is lost. They don't want to report on that. And also, as a result of this, guess what? Absolutely everybody knows what the deep state is. It's a shadow government that controls the real power. You don't have Congress consulted when war is declared. The Constitution isn't followed by the judicial branch. So old school politics was just theater.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Obama followed. He stomped on the Constitution. He did what he wanted. He didn't go through, any of the channels he was supposed to. He just overlooked Congress and everything. He was totally put in place to destroy the country. There's no doubt about it. George Soros was in bed with him too. Still is. God knows who else is involved. Do we know besides George Soros? Who else we got who is really big players in all this?
Well, the neoconservatives are. They're called neocons, and they're part of the New World Order movement. Now, a lot of your viewers or listeners may not have heard of this term, but they're part of the group, and they believe in American hegemony, that is, American imperialism. In the last 25 years, especially, they believe their mission in life is to take under the U.S.'s sovereign control any nation that really steps out of line, any nation that doesn't have a nice central bank that cooperates, any nation that is not allied with the CIA's policies for mankind. And they've been going after these nations one by one by one, and they are not afraid. These people are delusional. They are not afraid to create a conflict with Russia. And Hillary Clinton and her advisors were neoconservatives, in my opinion. Hillary Clinton used to say, well, I don't know why, but Vladimir Putin seems to have a beef with me. Well, he sure does, lady, because you're the one that has, and your people have set up all of these missile shields and all of these anti-missile systems all along his border, and you can turn those into weapons of mass destruction. You can turn those from non-nuclear to nuclear on a day's notice under the U.S. control, and you can have missiles going 1,000 kilometers into Russia. It would be like if we had missiles in Cuba. It would be the same thing, and Putin feels very, very threatened. And the Ukraine was a coup d'etat. He knows it. Most people know that. And, Hillary Clinton would have had us declare some kind of no-fly zone over Syria, which he's already declared. That would have brought us into direct conflict with Russia and probably started World War III. So these neoconservatives, part of the New World Order globalist movement, are very dangerous. I'll name just one of them. He's had a, quote, sterling diplomatic record, according to the mainstream media, but his views in those areas that I just mentioned tend to dangerous results in the year 2017 and beyond, in my personal opinion. I don't know the man. He's very well educated, a good background, but let's call him John Bolton, I believe his name is. And I notice that Trump is not appointing these type of people. He's been interviewing them, but as a rule, he has not appointed them. He's got a very strong Secretary of State who I think can help reestablish a reasonable level of contact with Russia. The Secretary of State position is probably the most important cabinet position because it reflects and deals with all foreign policy. So Trump has appointed some major generals to Department of Homeland Security, of course, to the Pentagon, his national security advisor. These people know intelligence. They know counterintelligence. They're very smart people. And I don't think they have neocon characteristics. So I'm not seeing in the group that he has appointed so far any people that would taint his administration or unduly influence him.
What happened to General Flynn, though? I mean, it seemed like there was a kind of a witch hunt for him, but Trump did let him go.
Yeah, well, this was part, and then I talk about this in the book in detail, and I'll tell you the table of contents later to give you the breadth of the scope. But here's what happened, and this is a lesson text in what they are doing right now and what they have the capability to do. And this is really showing you, if I go into it in some detail for a few minutes, this is showing you who is behind it. So here's my summary. Trump knows everything, and he is in the process of taking the New World Order people down. Now, they're highly traumatized. The mainstream media is using distractions to move the public away from the truth. Mm-hmm. You've got a hidden hand of a small group of families who run the monetary system of this world. And this includes the Committee of 300, which I'd like to talk about later on, a very important group. And this would encompass the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Council on Foreign Relations. These are some of the main groups who are pulling the strings. I give background history in the book on the Illuminati. This is the thinking that pervades these people. The Freemasons, the shadow government. I talk about the JFK conspiracy. My stepfather took the autopsy photos of JFK. I have a chapter on that because it talks about legends, covers, psyops, disinformations. It's a lesson text in critical thinking. But to get back to the main story, the globalists have a strategy of bringing in millions of illegal immigrants, putting them on welfare, and then moving us to permanent war status to bankrupt the country. And these people are the New World Order. And these politicians are bought and paid for. And I identify many of them in the book by name and the rest by affiliation. And I do cover how intelligence operations and their rogue elements and contractors work. And I lead you in the book through the maze and the matrix to the end game. Where are these New World Order policies purposely and secretly leading America? And anyway, I begin the book, getting back to your question, discussing how the NSA, in joint cooperation with the FBI, were monitoring the phone calls and texts made by the Russian ambassador to the United States. Now, this data is called raw acquired information. The distribution should have been restricted to no more than about 35, 40 analysts. It should have been classified in the NSA, ragtime A, B, C, D, or P, as in Patty, where each letter is a variety of an intelligence classification. That would have restricted it to under 50 people. So it should be a very rare instance where raw intelligence is like this is distributed outside of the intelligence community itself. Now, the three sets of signal communications that were intercepted between General Flynn and the ambassador should have stayed within controlled channels, but they likely circulated the transcripts, they declassified them, gave them the lowest security classification, then circulated them to the National Security Council, which during January was populated by Obama staffers. And then, of course, after Trump was sworn in, the FBI sent agents to question Flynn, and the acting attorney general informed White House counsel that their account of what Flynn said didn't match what Flynn insisted he'd said, and we don't know the full flow, but the VP became aware. Trump had to act. He lost a major. This man had 40 years of background, invaluable. And does that tell everyone a lot about how the deep state works, the vast power they hold? And so my book, I think, is an explosive account of ongoing cover-ups, and I look at the major questions that recur with the attacks on President Trump's administration. And
I've never seen anything like it, David. I'm going on 46 this year, but I mean, okay, I'm not old, but I've never seen anything like this. And my father tells me he hasn't seen anything like this. Even, people bring up Reagan and the resistance he had. It was nothing compared to this.
No, and you've got some strange players that are probably going to come out. I'll tell you one that has not yet come out in the major news, but I think will be part of this. And this is inside information, in a manner of speaking. It's GCHQ in London. And some of you people have probably heard of the United Kingdom's Government Communication Headquarters, GCHQ.
Yeah.
And if you heard of it, haven't you?
Oh, yeah, I know what they do, but go ahead.
Good. Well, they've heard of you. They've heard of me. They've heard of all of you. And if you use the World Wide Web from, just say, 07 forward, they probably logged your entries into their database. They've got all your metadata. They have a program called Karma Police, an operation, an op, harmless sounding. It's their data mining operation. It's the largest in the world. It is designed to track every visible user on the Internet. And by 6 years ago, they stored over 1.1 trillion events in their black hole database. They're gathering 30, 40 billion records per day, and who knows where it is today. And this data analyzes, your lifestyle, email addresses, instant messages. And if you looked at their website, they've got a record of that. They routinely share that information, among other data intercepts, with the Five Eyes partners. These are Canada, the U.S., Australia, New Zealand, Britain being number 5. So we know beyond a shadow of a doubt the deep state is in a major struggle against President Donald Trump. They didn't want him elected, and even after his election, they haven't given up, but they've resorted to a variety of covert and illegal means to discredit him. And the deep state is the dark side of the military and alphabet agency intelligence, and it is authorized and operated by the highest levels of authority. So let's look at what is happening. Then I know the Senate Intelligence Committee and the House are investigating this, and here's what I think they will discover. I think they will discover that collusion overseas with British GCHQ occurred illegally. And I believe they were monitoring, and they have data intercepts on Trump Tower. And this all happened at Trump Tower. And they had the same purpose, and this information was disseminated by authority here in the United States at the various highest level to certain senior Obama staffers, and this was an illegal act. So Trump is 100% correct that illegal access and monitoring were happening, and this will come out. And he knows there's no evidence whatsoever about Russian influence. There were no advisors, no financial interaction, no front companies, nothing. And that's why he's giving the go-ahead to the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence to investigate everything. So some very senior White House people used intelligence from GCHQ sources, in my opinion, in a seditious manner against the incoming Trump administration. That's the real story. I believe that's what the Senate Select Committee will find out and release. So was there someone at the White House who controlled the NSA? And I believe this will eventually cause a flurry of indictments at the highest level. This is Watergate on steroids, and we're at 1 minute to midnight.
Yeah, and so I mean, isn't there? Does Trump have some way where he can punish? I mean, even this intelligence gathering organization in Britain. I mean, is there something he could do, if not to them, to the people here who were receiving information from them? I mean, I would want to put the hammer down on those. I mean, because that's how they get around our laws is by, oh well, it's coming from Britain, right?
Right. Now, if Obama did not, and it's a big if, because it's very possible it happened through FISA court orders, which had to be authorized through the Attorney General under Obama, and if it did, then he was involved. If it didn't, it had to come from somewhere, and this is the only other source it could have come from, in my opinion, is GCHQ in Britain. So it came from one of those two sources. There's no doubt, I mean, the transcripts exist. There's no doubt that it was tapped, the Trump Tower was tapped. That's beyond any question. What you're saying is, yeah, it is a felony to distribute this classified information. Now, the reporters don't have any guilt, but the actual leakers do. And I don't think these people were smart enough to operate with dead drops like you do in spy tradecraft or, cutouts and all that. I think they probably used email, telephone, and everything else, maybe even letters. And I believe that this time is going to tell. But what is happening now is you're not only seeing all of this revelation come out, but you're seeing turf wars between the intel agencies, between the NSA and the CIA. Let me explain what I mean.
Okay.
Of course, you're very familiar, and everybody is, with Snowden.
Oh yeah.
And his story, in my opinion, I know his what he released is, amazing and everything else. But you have to look at his story, and you have to ask what really happened. And I don't believe his story is believable. His story is that he's a high school dropout, and he also dropped out of a community college. He wound up making $122,000 a year at the agency, and then he worked for the CIA and the NSA. He started out as a security guard for the NSA. Afterwards, he was promoted to the CIA under diplomatic cover in Switzerland. But wait, it gets better. He became a private contractor for the NSA at a military base in Japan, and then he was promoted to regional SIGINT operations in Hawaii, working under corporate cover. I think it was Booz and Hamilton. So in 2013, guess what? He's granted medical leave from the NSA. He goes to Hong Kong. He begins a series of leaks to London newspapers with the assistance of a documentary filmmaker named Laura Poitras. Finally, the Russians, of course, offered him asylum. So what's happening? Is he a red herring? Did someone use him, my question is, to act against the NSA? Now, some loyalist to the former administration did not care to pursue radical Islamic terrorism. But the NSA is in the forefront of this fight. And many people believe they're their last line of defense in the war against radical Islam. Now, the ultimate aim of the globalists, remember, is to destroy our intelligence agencies and the military. And the highest art of psyops, psychological warfare, is to disinform the public. It's not really accomplished by spreading complete lies, but by a one-sided and very artful selection of half-truths. Now, Snowden has acknowledged he was trained as a spy for the CIA, and he works sensitive overseas missions. You don't leave the company. The Christians in action. So why would the CIA attack the NSA? Is this a turf war? Did the CIA have a lot of heat on it and use this as a diversionary tactic to deflect the public attention on his practices? I think it's more than likely. And you can just use deductive logic. There's no proof one way or the other. But Edward Snowden told Brian Williams, he told NBC Nightly News, he is a trained intelligence operative who worked for the CIA, the NSA, and the DIA. Is he a government-created persona? Was he used for high-level disinformation and distraction? So all of this is coming out.
But some of the things that he released was the truth, though. So why did he do that? You think that was part of the plan? I mean, because really, basically, people who are awake and did research knew this stuff. Anyways, I knew that they were watching or listening to our phone calls and our email. I knew that everything we did was being monitored, but I didn't need him to tell me. But he did. He came out and he said it anyways. Yeah,
go back to that Gene Hackman movie, Enemy of the State, back in the late 90s, I think, around that.
Yeah.
That's perfect. I mean, my God, Gene Hackman's a brilliant actor. And anyway, so they knew it. Hollywood knew it. Hollywood knows a lot. And the public, the intelligent public, as you say, could watch that movie and say, well, yeah, and do a little research on their own and figure it out. And we knew. You're right, we knew, but we didn't know for sure until he released all those documents, which were true. And proved beyond any reasonable doubt what the NSA was doing. And so a lot of people think he's a hero, and a lot of people think he's a zero. But it doesn't matter. The main question is, how did this peculiar chain of circumstances happened to the man. And I personally think he was a CIA plant, and I think it was a turf war. And I just think you're going to see a lot of these side stories that don't make any sense unless you delve very, very deep. And you've got, like what happened in January. 16 agencies can review, receive, view, and disseminate raw data, and they created a shadow government against Trump. He lost General Flynn, and then they threatened Attorney General Sessions.
Yeah, and people should be going to jail for this. They really should, because this. Can you imagine if you or I were doing something like this? I mean, setting up coups against the government. Man, they'd come in and they'd shoot us, right, or start the house on fire with us in it.
Title 18, U.S. Code, seditious conspiracy. Absolutely, if one of us tried to do this, and then there's even a bigger story over this story, slightly bigger. And let me just mention this because my book talks about it. There's a pattern of economic crashes occurring every 7 years dating back to the Great Depression. You had the worst year of the Great Depression in 31, and then fast forward to the 70s, you had the Arab oil embargo, S&L crisis, Black Monday, 1994 bond massacre, 2001 NASDAQ crash, the 2008 and 9 financial collapse. Each one occurred at the end of a 7-year economic cycle, but now we're overdue now. And a part of my book, part of the hypothesis of it, is that we are on the verge of a Great Depression, and part of this may be purposely induced by the New World Order group. And I believe there's a plan to destroy the dollar and not pay back $100 trillion in unfunded liabilities. I believe the elite are transferring personal holdings to euros and gold. Their plan is to divest American assets, sell the dollar, renege on debt, start with a brand new currency. But I go over the detail in game in my book. Now, let me talk about this for a minute.
Okay.
David Stockman, the former budget director under Reagan, has raised a very interesting trigger point to this collapse. Now, in fact, it's interesting. It's almost historic that this interview is today because it's a well-known fact that the debt ceiling is automatically frozen at the end of the day on March 15th, tomorrow, 2017. This is how they arranged it, the Speaker of the House, Obama, over a year ago. Then the count begins. In other words, it's going to freeze right at just below $20 trillion. And the Secretary of the Treasury has already issued, the new Secretary of the Treasury a few days ago, has already issued a letter to the House and to the Senate, and he has warned them that emergency measures are forthcoming in order to keep the government operating. Now, the Treasury currently has $200 billion cash on hand. Now, at the rate that they spend, which is a little over $3 billion a day, this cash will last until approximately Memorial Day or the first week in June. Now, at that point, with the debt ceiling frozen at $20 trillion, the key question is, will Congress be able to vote successfully to raise this by trillions? Well, David Stockman suggests no, it is impossible, he says. He says the Tea Party conservatives are one faction of the Republicans, which are split. He says they will not vote for a multi-trillion-dollar debt ceiling increase before they've repealed Obamacare. And then he says the so-called reciprocal tax, which is a border adjustment tax proposed by the administration, will take 2 years to implement. It's highly controversial, so it's not part of the picture. Now, before all of this happens, the mother of all debt crises is on the table right now this year. The Democrats, as you know, will not pursue anything Trump recommends. They won't help them regardless. So this is the perfect storm. Now, the clock is ticking at the end of the day tomorrow. There's no pathway to a majority, he says, in the House or Senate to increase the debt ceiling. And the budget numbers just don't add up. So I think this may be a perfect time, and this is what half of my book talks about, to sell and to reposition assets. And my book covers the geopolitical and economic aspects of the reset. And I projected in the book, I didn't talk about David Stockman in the book, but he may have hit on an interesting trigger. I talked about a derivatives collapse. And just to summarize, the gross domestic product of the world is about $365 trillion. But the gross or notional value of all derivatives is $1,000 trillion, more than three times that. So you've got the possibility of a derivatives collapse. You've got the possibility of a failure of a major German banking system, war in the Middle East, a hike in oil prices, and many others. But I really have to admit after listening to him that the implosion of the economy could come from an unexpected source, such as a total government shutdown, because I think the stock market is a mirage. Its heights have only been reached with an unlimited debt ceiling, and I think this is about to come to a screeching halt. If you notice the Federal Reserve, during Obama's administration, guess what? They didn't touch it. They didn't touch the federal rate. It never moved. And now, in December, they moved it up, and they're going to move it up this month. The Open Markets Committee is going to move up the rate again, and this is going to squeeze Main Street even more. So, I think this is a major backdrop to everything else. We need to focus both on the politics of the deep state in the war against Trump, but we also need to focus on the end game and how to protect ourselves against anything that could even start as early as this spring.
Now, wouldn't Trump know? I mean, what he think he'd have access to, a lot of information. I mean, wouldn't he know that they're? I think he even mentioned at some point that they might try to pull something like that on him. And I don't know. You would hope that he'd be somehow prepared. And couldn't we just I don't know, as other countries have done it, just kick the bankers the hell out, right? And
well, that would be the perfect solution, but
well, he'd be the guy to do it, right? Or can he do that?
Yeah. But let me tell you something about the Federal Reserve, and you've hit on a very interesting. You've hit on the mother of all conspiracies right here. So I'm glad you brought this up. Excellent question. The Federal Reserve. I watched Alan Greenspan one time talk on Meet the Press, one of these programs, and they said to him, Russert or somebody asked him. He said, now, who does the Fed report to? He says, it does not report to anybody. He said, we are totally independent, and we can do whatever we want. Now, I just want to tell your viewers that the Federal Reserve is about as federal as Federal Express. Yeah. It is a consortium of private international banks. Read a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island. In 1913, it was formed after a 3-year secretive series of meetings by top international bankers. There's about 20 international banks that own the Federal Reserve, and we don't know how much of their profits every year are repatriated to the U.S. Treasury and how much are repatriated to the banksters. We don't know because there is no audit. And every time Senator Rand Paul or somebody says we need an audit, they are stonewalled. And we're talking about U.S. senators being stonewalled. So you're right. Trump is aware of this. I don't know how quickly, with everything else he's got going on, he can do something about it. Now, he has put some great people in place, and he has authority over, the head of the SEC, the head of Treasury. He has his own, you might say, open market committee that he can go to for consult and advice. But I just believe, from what people I've known in the past, there are International Monetary Fund covert agents in Europe and elsewhere that can cause runs on currencies. I know this. And all this trading that's going on right now in London and in New York, a lot of it is black box trading. And you don't even have humans involved. And it is subject to manipulation. And if you had a perfect storm of a government shutdown combined with higher interest rates created by the Federal Reserve, combined with any other type of debt crisis or revelation, you might see the mirage of the stock market drop to 15,000 and then drop in half. So that's what I think a lot of people need to be concerned about. I think now is an excellent time to reposition, and I discuss the mainstay of precious metals, and in the book I discuss all kinds of things. I discuss is global economic collapse unavoidable, derivatives panic, 7 experts who agree with me, the plan to overthrow the U.S. economy by the New World Order, how to understand historical collapses, oil, geopolitics, and war, the art of intelligence, Chinese and Russian deception, and so forth. So I discuss a lot of economic theory, in fact, as well, and how to participate in South African gold shares, funds, ETFs, exchange-traded funds that operate on an inverse ratio to the market. And of course, I disclaim all the investment advice because I'm not an investment advisor and I don't run any funds. I'm just writing this, you might say, as an intellectual or as a researcher. And so I have no personal, contact with anyone. I don't want any personal contact with anyone other than on a theory basis. And I don't do any money management. I don't do anything like that. I would never do it. I'm not qualified to do it. I have no licenses, and I've never done it. So I have I'm completely free of any conflict. I'm purely a researcher and an historian.
All right. And David, we've got to take a break here, so hold your thoughts there, and we'll come back and pick up right where we left off. So, David, so then it would be, based on your research, and you're like, I got a friend by the name of Stu, and he says that he thinks it's going to all come crashing down too. So you believe they're going to get to that card, and they're going to force a financial disaster?
I believe 2017 is a very high possibility, particularly since I've listened to David Stockman's analysis, which I just did a few days ago. I wasn't familiar with it until 2 or 3 days ago. And apparently he interviewed with Maria Bartiromo, I think her name is, of Fox News, and that has been uploaded by someone to the YouTube. It's a short 10-minute interview, but very coherent, very cogent, very, very interesting. And I think that might indeed, be something that is right on point. Now, I do want to compliment you. I just listened to some of your commercials and commentary in the last 10 minutes, and some of it is really, all of it is really on point. And I think a lot of your listeners are probably saying, well, you know what? Why are these people, the anti-Trump people, the anti-Trump media, why are they, psychologically or in reality, why are they like they are? What is wrong with them? And I've got two answers to that.
Yeah.
They're either
go
you know what
ahead.
I'm about to say.
Yeah.
They're either brainwashed or they're afraid of something. The lower levels are brainwashed. The people on the street, that you see in these demonstrations and everything else, they're brainwashed or paid for. But the people at the top are afraid. And let me tell you why they're afraid. I'd like to get this out right away in front of your listeners. The Committee of 300, and you have to understand this Committee of 300. It is the governing body of the New World Order. This explains why and how the cover-up takes place. Now, they work through the Royal Institute of International Affairs in London. That was established many decades ago, and it's the equivalent of the Council on Foreign Relations in the United States. They also work through the Aspen Institute, the Club of Rome. They all possess various executive arms. Now, I was told this by an MI6 intelligence officer. Now, their arm in the United States is called the Council on Foreign Relations, from which the U.S. Secretary of State, Clinton and otherwise, have drawn all of their strategies almost entirely until now, therefore following the Socialist Party line. If you control the Secretary of State, you control foreign policy. Now, the Constitution, as you know, is immutable, but these progressives or socialists, as they call themselves, or progressives, supposedly interpret it in a flexible manner. Now, Woodrow Wilson, let's go back to him for a minute. He was a major leftist under whom the Federal Reserve was established. Now, if you recall, before the Federal Reserve, and the graduated income tax, we had a $5 billion surplus through trade tariffs, and both the Reserve and the income tax saw to it that the extreme opposite would occur. Now, in leaving office, Wilson spoke a veiled statement acknowledging the presence of the Committee of 300. Here's what he said, quote, "Some of the biggest men in the United States in the field of commerce and manufacturing are afraid of somebody, are afraid of something. They know there's a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so pervasive that they'd better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it." Now, this power he was talking about, President Wilson, was the Committee of 300. Mikhail Gorbachev announced in the United States years ago he was forming a foundation. CNN was filming it, and Gorbachev plainly stated, "We have the approval of the Committee of 300. Well, that transcript was requested, and it was never acknowledged. But Gorbachev had been at the very top of
This comes out of Washington. Let's see. Before the first snow fell, U.S. meteorologists, they realized there was a good chance the late winter storm wasn't going to produce giant snow totals in big Northeast cities as predicted, but they didn't change their forecast because they said they didn't want to confuse the public. Hey, everyone, huge storm coming, barrel down, right? Never mind. I'll tell you, even the Weather Channel, they don't want, these forecasters don't want to admit they can't tell you the truth about the weather. You know why? Because they have no freaking idea. What they should be telling you is, folks, the weather system is screwed up, and we don't even know. We don't know if this is going to hit you or not, but they don't want to admit it. University of Minnesota drops homecoming queen and king and replaces with genderless royals. Speaking of big pharma, the University of Minnesota has become the latest university to do away with the traditional homecoming king and queen titles and have replaced them with the gender-neutral royals term. You see, this is what I mean about it being crammed down our throats. This is what I mean about it being an agenda. It is an agenda. This whole transgender, homosexual thing, it's being crammed down the throats of people. And listen, again, I don't care if you're transgender. I don't care if you're homosexual. I'd still sit down and have dinner with you. That doesn't bother me. But don't cram this crap down my throat. Don't cram it down our throats. You're destroying. Now, this is interfering with tradition. It's always been traditional, the king and queen. We can't help it if you like the same sex or if you were born differently than others. You know, welcome to planet Earth where everything is just strange, okay? But, now this school is going to do I'll tell you, if I was a parent, I'd take my kids right out of the school. I would. I'd have to. I mean, because look what they're teaching them. Look what they're embedding in these kids' heads. I mean, they don't even get a choice. It all gets crammed down their throats. Incredible. All right, 400,000-year-old half skull points to mystery people. They say the discovery of this 400,000-year-old half skull in Portugal has offered tantalizing hints about a possible ancestor of the Neanderthals, and researchers have reported this. The fossil was unearthed in a cave site, and it marks the oldest human cranium fossil ever found in Portugal. So maybe when they get some answers to that, maybe they'll tell us, maybe they won't. If they do, we'll pass it on to you. Study: 4 in 5 Oklahoma City students can't read clocks. Yeah, that's what it says, and I believe it. 4 in 5 Oklahoma City students can't read clocks. You know, test them sometime. If you see, very rare that you see them with a traditional watch on. Not one of them Google this or that tell them everything they need to know. But a real watch, test them sometimes. Say, hey, you got the time? And see if they look and stare at it. I can't see it. That's because that's what they'll do. Because I'm telling you, they've dumbed them down. Dumbed them down. Thank God. Maybe we got a chance now. Maybe we could build them back up. We've got to build them back up. They don't know anything. I'm telling you, this AI. Alfred Weber might be onto something there with this AI, and at least to the point that it's how it's taken over. They say, oh, Google, tell me this, or Google, tell me that. They don't need to know anything. They just ask the question. So then when it comes time and they go, Google, was 9/11 an inside job? No, and never ask that question again. Okay, thank you, Google. That's all they need. Just they'll give you the answers. Just like they'll tell you what pills to take. They'll tell you what cars to drive. They'll tell you everything. Everything you want to know. They'll tell you exactly how to run your life if that's what you want. And you obviously want that if that's what you do. I mean, I couldn't imagine having one of them little devices in my house or my studio and asking questions. My good Lord. Anyhow, let's see if we can get maybe one more in here. Oh, this one. We touched on this one once before. Alien hunters who claim to have spotted a giant 2-mile-wide saucer moving along the Pacific sea floor. There's no new information here on that. It's just that they had used Google Maps to find the saucer-shaped objects and that it's 2 miles in diameter. So, I don't know. Maybe we could ask Patty Brazard about that next week when she's on. Kim Jong-un, he's back again. Kim Jong-un threatens merciless attacks on America in retaliation for South Korea drills. Little Kim Jong-un better settle down over there. Little Kim's going to get himself in trouble. Kim Jong-un has threatened to unleash a merciless attack on America if joint military exercise with South Korea continue. He said he would attack his Western enemies from ground, air, sea, and underwater. Well, isn't that the sea, little Kim? Ask him if he could read the clock. I wonder. Anyways, that's what he said in a rattling statement released through state media. Little Kim Jong-un, I have trouble taking this guy serious because if you put him right next to Rosie O'Donnell, it's almost hard to tell them apart. If it wasn't for the eyes, you couldn't tell those two apart. I mean, I think they're sisters, Kim Jong-un. Maybe they could be king and queen. Oh, I'm sorry, royal. Is that it? Royals? I mean, I don't know. What's the politically correct term? I don't know, and I don't care. So, anyhow. Oh, I want to go to break because I'm supposed to here. But you know what? Because we got a guest coming up. But I've got to tell you about a couple more here because you got to know about them. There is that's what it's called, a creepy facial recognition app. That's right. And it lets users find strangers on Facebook by taking their picture. Now, I don't like this. I don't like this at all. But, of course, I wouldn't, right? I say here, a facial recognition app that can identify strangers from a photograph has been created by a British entrepreneur. It's called FaceZam, and it can identify people by matching a photo of them with their Facebook profile. All users have to do is take a picture of someone on the street. So we could be walking down the street. Someone could just take a picture. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you pull up next to somebody. You have a little disagreement on the road, traffic-wise. The guy gets mad at you. He could take a picture of you. He could then go put it on Facebook. He could use his facial recognition app and he could find you. And if you're one of the dummies who put all your information on Facebook, then he's going to come to your house and maybe kick your ass or kill you, right? Or who knows, damage your property. Or I mean, this is not good. This is not a good thing. It's called FaceTime, and I don't like it. So I'm telling you, folks, I really am. I'm considering just taking everything down off of Facebook. Listen, we got to make a stand here. You know, we keep talking about how bad it is, you know, and I use it for the show because I try to pull as many